You know, I used to be a snob. There's no other way to put it. I was a bit of a lumber snob. And when I started getting serious about woodworking, I had this hierarchy in my head. And you've probably got it too. At the top, you've got exotic hardwoods, walnut, mahogany, teak. And then you have your domestic hardwoods like white oak, maple, cherry. And then way down the list, you're going to have softwoods like pine. And then at the very bottom of the list, down in the dirt underneath the boot of real woodworkers, well, that's where you keep MDF. To me, MDF kind of represented everything that was wrong with modern manufacturing. It was kind of IKEA junk. It was cardboard, it's held together by glue. It just didn't have a soul, didn't smell like a forest, it smelled like a factory. And I made a silent vow that if I was ever going to be a real woodworker, I wasn't going to have that stuff in my shop. And for a long time, I stuck to that. I built shop furniture out of construction lumber. I built jigs out of plywood scraps. I forced solid wood into places that honestly it didn't belong because my ego told me that that plastic wood, well, it was kind of cheating. But today, I'm here to tell you that I was wrong. And if you still hold on to a bias like that, I think that you might be wrong too. This video isn't about how MDF is better than walnut, because it's not. But it's a video about maturity. It's about the maker psyche, moving from doing things to prove something to doing things because they work. So grab a coffee. We're going to get deep into medium density fiberboard. We're going to talk about why it's hated, why it's misunderstood, and why for specific applications, it is technically superior to the most expensive board in your rack. Now, let's start with the biggest argument for MDF. And it's not price, it's actually physics. We love wood as makers because it's organic. It was alive, but because it was alive, it never stops moving. It breathes, it absorbs moisture in the summer, and it swells across the grain. It dries out in the winter and shrinks. Cups, it twists, and it bows. Now, here's where I think that MDF wins. MDF is an engineered material and it has no grain direction. It has no internal tension. It's homogenized. And when you buy a sheet of 3/4 inch MDF, it is dead flat. And unless you soak it in a bathtub, well, it's going to stay flat. Think about the things that we build in the shop. Router tables, assembly tables, table saw sleds. These are reference surfaces. A reference surface cannot have a personality. It cannot have seasons. It needs to be a rock. If your reference surface moves every cut you make, it's going to be wrong because it's off. And in this context, using solid wood for a jig, it isn't high quality. It's actually bad engineering. You're introducing a variable into a tool that's supposed to be a constant. And MDF, well, it honestly eliminates that variable. Now, let's move to the second area where MDF honestly dominates. It's painted finishes. Now, we've all seen those high-end kitchens on Instagram, navy blue islands, forest green built-ins, and they look like they were dipped in glass. They're smooth, they're flawless. And if you try to achieve that look with red oak, God help you, you're going to spend 3 days just trying to fill the grain. You prime it, the grain pops, you sand it back, prime it again, you paint it, you can still see the texture. Now, some people, they like that texture, but if you want that modern seamless look, well, solid wood fights you every step of the way. MDF is honestly a blank canvas. It's basically high density paper. The face of a good sheet of MDF, well, it's smoother than 400 grit sandpaper right out of the store. You seal the cut edges, which we'll talk about in a minute. You spray it, and then it looks like something that came out of a factory. And here's the maker psyche part of this. Why are we using expensive solid wood that we're just going to paint over with opaque paint? That feels more sinful to me than using MDF. If I have a beautiful piece of cherry, I want to see the grain. If I'm building a painted shaker door for a cabinet, using cherry just seems like a waste of natural resource. Using MDF, well, it's efficient. Now, I can hear comments, and I've read them online before. MDF is trash because it falls apart. You can't screw into it. It splits. And this is where I think that we need to separate the material from the user error. MDF gets a bad reputation because of cheap mass-produced furniture. We've all had that bookshelf from a big box store where the cam lock thing ripped out of the side the first time you moved apartments. But that's not the material's fault. You see, that's a design fault. MDF has very specific rules. You cannot treat it like pine. Rule number 1, you can't drive a wedge into it. If you take a standard screw with a tapered shank and you drive it into the edge of MDF, it acts like a log splitter. It will delaminate the board 100% of the time. To work with MDF, you have to respect its structure. You need to pre-drill, and you need to use the right fasteners like deep thread screws that are designed for composite materials. You need a countersink so that the material doesn't mushroom up around the head. But honestly, MDF really shines with glue. It's a sponge for wood glue. A glued dado joint in MDF is incredibly strong. In fact, if you try to break it, the material will fail before the glue line does. So when people say MDF falls apart, what they usually actually mean is I tried to build something using the same techniques I use for construction lumber or regular plywood, and it didn't work. See, MDF is a different medium, and you have to learn that medium. Now, I'm not an apologist here. I'm not saying that this stuff's perfect. There is a reason that people hate it, and one of those reasons is absolutely valid. The dust. If you cut a piece of pine, you get sawdust. It's kind of manageable. You sweep it up, but if you cut MDF, you get a cloud of like this fine talcum powder like dust that just kind of goes everywhere, and it's not wood. It's urea formaldehyde resin. It is chemical dust. If you're going to use this stuff, you have to take safety very seriously, because you cannot rip a sheet of MDF in a closed garage with no mask and no dust collection. You're going to feel it in your lungs for 2 days. I've probably been there, honestly. And here's the thing. The other thing about MDF is that it's heavy. A sheet of 3/4 inch plywood, well, it weighs about 60 or 70 pounds. A sheet of 3/4 inch MDF weighs close to 100 pounds. It is a backbreaker. It's hard to move around the shop when you're alone. So no, it's not fun to work with. It's messy, it's heavy, and it's fragile in the corners until it's assembled. But once it's assembled, it's rock solid. So where does that leave us? Where does MDF fit in the maker hierarchy? I think we need to stop looking at materials as good versus bad or real versus fake. We need to look at them as right versus wrong for the application. This workbench top, it's MDF. It's 2 pieces of MDF and they're laminated together. And then I put a piece of plywood that is pre-finished on top of this, a real thin piece, so that if I tear this up, I just rip this off and throw it away and put a new piece of 1/4 inch piece on here, because those 2 pieces of laminated 3/4 inch MDF, they're not going anywhere. They are solid, they're flat, they're heavy, and they are going to last for a long, long time. Now, here's the thing. If I'm building, let's just say, a dining table that I want my grandkids to eat off of, well, I'm going to use walnut. You see, I want that history, I want that repairability, I want that soul, I guess, so to speak. But if I'm building the template that helps me make that table, or the cabinet that holds my tools, or honestly, a lot of the parts of a painted built-in for a mudroom or anything like that, well, I'm going to use MDF, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Learning to love MDF is really just learning to check your ego at the door. It's about caring more about the result than the romance. I'm curious though, do you allow MDF in your shop? Are you strictly a real wood shop? Let me know down in the comments below. I try to read as many as I can. And honestly, thanks for hanging out and listening to me rant for a bit. Go make something. I'll see you in the next one.